And welcome to Mindful Live 74. It is currently Thursday, the 12th of May, 2022. Welcome to Mindful Live 74. I am your host, Nathan Springer. Who else will it be? And it's a pleasure to have you here. We're talking current events, news, information, whatever came across my mind that is apparently full. So, the news of the day is continuing with the kind of news of the week, it seems. Earlier in the week, it was school violence, then it was the tragedy of this young boy who was lost, and now it is 4 women being murdered for the week. Insanity. And women being murdered always is a bigger highlight. It's always a bigger highlight. And to be very honest, it kind of has always been a bigger highlight for a very long time. For a very long time. So a lot of the society is judged by how they treat the women in this society. That is a fact. A million men could die and there will be a difference in reaction if 50 women die versus that. That's just the reality of how societies go. Now, there are many reasons for that in terms of the importance of women in general society. There are many reasons for that other than the interactions themselves. So no one is asking what can we do to make things better? How can we love again? Well, I think people are asking that, to be very fair. We as the public need that autopsy informed to us. Well, the autopsy for the young child, to just revert to that a little bit, to clear that up, the autopsy for the young child has been postponed, I believe, till next week. So the thing with a lot of this, the longer they postpone this, and I think a lot of politicians, a lot of officials know this about the public. And don't worry, you don't have to feel guilty as a Trinidadian, like this is only something the Trinis do. It's common in most politics, in most political atmosphere anywhere in the world. The politicians know they push something down the road enough, and most people forget about it. Most people aren't as aggravated and as animated about it in the long run. So they push it down the road, and sometimes that's all it takes. So yes, we are speaking tonight specifically, at least starting, talking about the violence that seems to be being unleashed on the women in our society. And there were 4 murders of women for the week. 4. And as I said in the contemplation today, one of the primary reasons why, and many times you hear the guys who are serious about the men's rights, etc., 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 you hear them speak and they talk about how cruel it is that there seems to be this heightened focus on when women are murdered and when women are harmed. But look how many men are murdered every day, and that is true. That is true. 4 women murdered for the week, and that is plastered on headline after headline. Very likely that will be a headline even till tomorrow. You see, here's part of the truth with that. It's men doing the killing either way. That's just the reality. That although, yes, men are murdered more, well, men are killing men, and the men are killing the women too. So in the woman's case, you're not, as it were, a party to this aggravation and violence. Someone is perpetrating it on you while you are not able to defend yourself from it, as it were. That's the way at least society sees this. And it's a one-way street. However, interestingly enough, this week, out of the 4 women that were killed, 1 was actually killed by another woman. And I think when we go into that story too, and you look at some of the things in that story, it tells a truth that links back to something that I was looking at even in the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial business that is going on right now. And the reality of domestic violence and how the interaction between the sexes in domestic instances go. All right. If you're confused, stay and you would understand as we go on. All right. And for all of you inside of the live, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure the algorithm knows that you think this is some good stuff. And be sure to head over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer on YouTube. If you want to subscribe, you can see the lives over there and you can catch them whenever you miss them. You can go there and see them repeated whenever you want. So be sure to subscribe there, and there are some other videos and little snippets and little cut pieces, etc., etc. Have a ball. But subscribe to Nathan Springer over on YouTube. Click that like button. Drop a comment also. If you're looking at this later on YouTube, drop a comment. Tell me what you think. And let's get into the news of the day. All right. Starting. It's. And. 6 times we called police. Now she's dead. They've come. These stories, like, what you gonna do? What are you going to do? 6 times they called the police, and still a young lady, after hacking Ellen Mohammed to death, almost severing her neck, a Guayari man walked out onto the road with a bloodied cutlass, flagged down a passing police patrol vehicle, and surrendered. First up, here is where a lot of the problems lie, I think. Because it's difficult, it's very difficult to battle someone who doesn't have much interest in preserving themselves. It's like one of the difficulties with battling the ideologues, like some of the radical militants in the Middle East who are willing to sacrifice their own lives for your death. Like, what are you going to do against someone like that? There isn't much you can do. And for the most part, how the police work, for the most part, is in hindsight. The way the police generally work is that you feel the police are going to hold you if you do something. So because of that feeling that they are going to hold you if you do something, that would stop you from doing it. Now, many trainees are very familiar with this statement, I could go and sit down in jail normal. And a statement like that tells a certain mindset, and there's a reason trainees say that statement. The idea of that statement is that the very deterrent that police are could be bypassed if you are very okay with sitting in jail. And if you combine that with the fact that when you look at many of these instances, if you look at the teacher who murdered his wife about a month ago, and killed himself soon after. If you look at many of the instances with these domestic disputes, very often the man kills himself or shows very little regard for his own well-being after that. Because very often these men are already on a spiral downward. And if someone is already on a spiral downward, if they already have no interest in their own good. Good night, cybercrime unit. Very interesting name. Kind of scary name. If they are already at that point, how do you really stop them? How do you really stop them? And for example, the lady who was murdered with her young son earlier this week, she reportedly had numerous, what you call those papers? She had numerous papers, protective orders out against him. But what is a protective order going to do with someone who is willing to go and sit in jail or face the ultimate consequence, face death? What is a protective order going to do? Police said the murder occurred around 10:50 a.m. in front of two of Mohammed's three daughters, a 3-year-old and 18-month-old, her brother Isaiah and her father Steve Jones were not at home when the tragedy occurred. In an interview yesterday, Isaiah said his sister got involved with the man 3 months ago, but soon became fearful for her life when he began abusing her physically. She told her family. Now, listen, I don't know how fast some people move, but to me, 3 months is extremely short in a relationship. This man has to be a different level of psychopath, to me. How do you get so attached to someone in 3 months? 3 months? It takes long to get onto police, and the person could be already outside your place and the damage may be already done. That is correct. And that's why for many people the paper only works if this guy hasn't reached the end of his rope yet, generally speaking. I cannot read that, Rooney. In an interview yesterday, Isaiah said his sister got involved. Yes, he was threatening to kill her. This man only waiting for when I go out to work so he could attack my family. He said he wanted to chop up the whole family, Isaiah revealed. So obviously, it seems like the man came to the house before. Because if the brother is saying the man only waiting on when I go to work to come to threaten my family, it seems like that wasn't the only time the man came to the house. Mohammed's father, Jones, also blamed the police for the tragedy, saying it could have been avoided. We made 6 reports in the station. They never come. Today, they put caution tape and come here with 15 police jeep, Jones said. Now, I understand, not totally, but I can empathize, I can sympathize with exactly what the father is saying there. Can you imagine you're thinking in your head, if you came those times before, you could have stopped this very thing from happening. I understand that. I understand that. I understand what the father is saying there completely. But what are you going to do? We as police officers try our best to accommodate to any report with extreme prejudice. Police always hesitate to act in domestic issues. I don't think they always hesitate. I think it's a difficult thing to adjudicate. That is the reality. If the man comes and stands outside the home and he's cussing and quarreling and the police come, what are they going to do? They're going to come and say, hey, go home now, boy. But he hasn't done anything violent yet. What are they going to do? Very often, the police do show up for many of these things. The police show up, and by the time they show up, the man could have already left. The man could have already left. Cam Eros says men willing to give up their ghosts too easily, bro, means they lost self-value. That could be the key, helping restore the mindset of how valuable we are as men. I understand that, and I could agree with that. I could understand what you're saying there, that a lot of these men don't see themselves as valuable, but that's already at the end of the rope. That obviously has to be caught sometime before. And to me, that's the key in a lot of this. When you look at these men, they are obviously at the end of their rope, and that's why they reach to these situations. These things, and that's, as I was saying, the difficulty with protective orders. These things almost always happen with the men at the end of their rope. The end of their rope means they are willing to give up everything at that moment, and they want to go out with as much prejudice and violence to all who they see as causing their problems as possible. That's the way they see it. And if you're at that point, what is going to be done to solve that and stop that? Threatening a person is a crime. Okay, but how do you prove someone threatened you? Can you always prove someone threatened you? And what's the nature of the threat? Many of the times it might be a one word against another word. And we'll get to why that is also a tricky thing. Okay, well, you'd have to record the person. And if you record the person and you say they threatened you, you play that to the officers, they may go and see what charge they could put on the person. If they do put a charge on the person, it goes, and they go before the magistrate, they're out on bail, and they're on the streets again. That does nothing. It does nothing. I wouldn't doubt that the police, Jungle Toad says the police respond very quickly. I would not doubt that. But very often, as quickly as the police can respond, might not be fast enough. The final of the 4 that were killed this week, the women. 21 grandchildren, another woman killed. A woman was found dead in a home in Blue Basin today with a piece of cloth covering a fatal wound to her head. Police believe Marva Sutherland was struck on the head with a rock wielded by a man who they had known since they were children. Sutherland, the mother of 4, was found by her daughters at around 9:30 a.m. And there's an interview there with the son. Really sad, heart-wrenching kind of stuff. And it is a very similar story. It's a very similar story. The man was unraveling. He was working some maxi job. The job wasn't going too well. And he was unraveling, and he was violent and abusive to the woman for a while. He was unraveling, and he reached the end of his rope, and that's where it came to. Because in most of these domestic cases, when a husband kills his wife, when an ex kills his ex, when a child father kills his child mother, you are not going to get away with this. These men who are doing these crimes, they don't have getaway on their mind, and that's the scary part of it. They are at the end of their rope. So a protection order, when you see him, and it's you could consider it nearly in the, despite what killing is not an option. I'm not saying killing, I hope that is not what you are understanding from what I'm saying here. This is by no means an excuse or a justification for any of these horrendous acts. We are here trying to discuss and understand and see ways to avoid, help, and cure, and get information on it. This is why I say these men need to get their mental health in check. Very true. Very true. And that's why also as women, you need to be very careful about the crazy men if you go around crazy men. Any man that is playing that kind of jealousy thing, well, that's where some of that ends. But yes, that's the difficulty. If you look at some of this, to me, you have to analyze some of these men's actions. It was said the man and the lady's son was fighting, the stone was spelled behind. All right. I don't know all of that. But I think a lot of these instances, when you look at the run-up to some of it, it could nearly be analyzed like an instance of self-harm. I just don't want to say the word because I know some of these social media apps are triggered easily. But it could look nearly like the symptoms of that. You see the man and like he's psyching up himself. He comes by the house, he throws a threat, and he walks away, he goes again, he comes back, he goes again. What he's doing is he's trying to build up his, I don't even want to use the word courage there, his psychopathy. He's trying to build up the sickness in his head, however you want to put it, to be able to do the act that he knows that he's going to do. Very often that's the case. There's some psych up to it. The guy comes and he does that. Now, the problem with this, someone is saying, what the police respond quickly. Okay, the police come. What are the police going to do? If the man hasn't done anything yet, if the man is not on the premises, do they just take the woman's word? And here's the difficulty that I am going to talk about. I think that joins back to some examples that I'm going to point to. Part of the difficulty has to do with the very nature of the relationship between men and women. And here's what I mean. The reality is, if you make it too easy for women to get protection orders that without a man perpetrating any violent act, he can get himself in serious trouble, then you provide women with a weapon to use against men. And here's the thing before anybody feels the need to pull out the stones and pelt at me. The reality is domestic violence does go both ways. And it might seem insane to talk about it, domestic violence going both ways in an instance where you're seeing 4 women dead. But I think understanding it as a holistic picture is the key to solution. And that's where I linked to this Amber Heard, Johnny Depp case that is going on right now. I am sure many people have heard about that case. It's all about the news. And seen the fallout and the ins and the outs of all of this. And regardless of whose side you're on, which team you're on, one thing is evident. That woman was abusive. And she was manipulative. And there are many women just like that. For sure, she physically assaulted the man. For sure, after she physically assaulted the man, she taunted him about it and told him that nobody is going to believe you even if you report it. And then after she did that, she reported him for it. And his career was ruined over it. And that's some of the problems in trying to protect women rightfully. Sometimes the law leans too easily on one side and makes it so that this woman can go and just make an allegation in court. Just walk up to the police station, make an allegation, and a protective order is written up by the police with this man's name and picture on it, and the man has not gotten a chance to clear his name or defend himself. And then, if this man hasn't done anything, has never done anything, this woman for some reason is vindictive, and she has an order, and she could get the police at a call to physically assault this man, you are putting people's lives in danger. Officers' attitude towards domestic violence needs to change also. I would of course agree with that. There would always be room for betterment. The reason very often you hear many officers talk about that is many of them become jaded after years of doing it. If year in, year out, day in, day out, you are called to domestic violence scenes and you reach there and you ask and the person says, no, we don't want to press any charges. I just wanted him to calm down a little bit. If you do that, if you're doing that, after a while, it could feel like, this doesn't make any sense, whatever. They're going to quarrel, and then they're going to get back together, and it's all fine. It will get you jaded after a while. It gets you jaded after a while. You go, the woman, some neighbor calls and the woman is screaming about something. You go, you stop and you hit the husband a baton to get him off the woman, and the woman jumps on your back and is scraping your neck to get you off of her husband. Don't touch my man. That's the reality of some of these domestic situations. I mean, it would be lovely if everything was very straightforward and clean and obvious, and what you should do is this and what you shouldn't do is that. A lot of it is very murky because you're dealing with emotions. Many women have lived for decades with men that they will say they love, and the man has been abusive. And the same for men. Many men have lived with women and lived their entire lives being abused, and they might not even call it abuse. Because here's the strange thing about this. Looking at this Amber Heard trial, I refreshed some of the data that I already had, but I just made sure to refresh it. And there are some interesting facts about domestic violence. Do you know, as of the most current statistics that can be found, women are the majority perpetrators of domestic violence? It's a fact. Women are the majority perpetrators of domestic violence. If you look at relationships, a simple way you could check it, you look at the different types of sexual orientations and their relationships. The orientation jungle toad, I was not saying that is how the order is granted. I was saying if you make it easier for it to be granted and easier for police to just act on it, as many people see should be the solution to protect women, if you do that, then you would make it a weapon to women. I'm not saying that is how it is right now. That's not what I was saying. But thank you nonetheless for the information. But yes, if you look at different types of relationships, female to female, lesbian relationships have the highest occurrence of domestic violence among all lesbian relationships, followed by women in bisexual relationships, and then heterosexual women and heterosexual men. Let me see if I could pull up the exact 43.8% of lesbian women and 61.1% of bisexual women have experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner. By far. Now, here's the problem with this. It seems by most statistical studies that women do perpetrate the violence more often, by far. But when a man perpetrates violence, it very often, well, not very often, it is more likely to reach much further than the woman's violence. So how do you solve a problem like that, where in reality the man is attacked on more instances, but if and when the man attacks back or attacks first, his attack would more likely cause serious damage? That is a very difficult problem to find solutions for. You're walking a tightrope there. You have to balance this. You have to protect the men because they are being attacked very often. And if you're being honest, if most men think about many of the relationships they've had with women, and you think about, really, how many times has this woman hit me? And you're like, wow. Yes, women hit more often. It's a fact. And I'm not just talking playful hit here. I'm talking real hit. She lost her temper and hit you. Many men would tell you, yeah. But as a big masculine man, that is not problem. But really, that's a problem. It is. That's abuse. But what are you going to do in terms to protect the man from that direction? But also understanding the reality that if this man does retaliate, or if we find an abusive man, the result is going to be not just a scratch on your face and a scratch on your neck and a bite and a slap and that kind of stuff. You're going to end up with dead people here. That is why we as men need support groups, and we should forget that over macho mentality. I agree if I understand what you mean by over macho, because to be very honest, I think as some of the world has tried to move away from what they call traditional and typical masculinity. Some of it has only gotten worse. Traditional, typical masculinity does not involve abusing women to me. That's not what it is. And I think we need some more masculine men to understand this. The masculine men aren't the ones that are going to be hitting women. As a man, it is hard to say a woman beating you. Yes, it could be hard. And I think really and truly, a lot of this, just as many of the feminists say in the assault arguments, don't tell the woman how to dress, teach your men not to rape, etc., etc. Similarly for women, it's not just about telling the men how to open up about being abused. It's you have to teach women to behave themselves. You have to teach women, and I think in modern times, some of the overcompensating on certain directions because of certain granted historical inequalities, some of the overcompensation has thrown some of these things on their head. There was a time where many women, probably too much, but had the understanding and the respect that, hey, that man is physically stronger than me. I am not going to attempt to get in a physical tangle with him. That was understood. And I think that still needs to be a lesson that is reinforced. You can't tell anything nowadays, say something, and men would be labeled insecure, toxic, misogynist. The women nowadays are more aggressive because of what is said in the past about females. So men just keep silent. It's not worth the argument. I'm not talking about an argument here, though. I'm talking about in terms of culturally, in the upbringing of children of our society. It needs to be taught, just as it was taught to boys. I remember in my era growing up through primary school, etc., one of the things that was really pounded in is don't hit girls, don't hit girls, you don't hit girls, don't hit girls, you don't hit girls. But similarly, I think such a thing should be reinforced with girls too, that you don't hit boys. And even with the understanding of the kind of consequences that may come with hitting a boy, with hitting a man, understanding the difference. But you see, in our modern society, we are moving away from understanding that there are intrinsic differences between men and women. And if we don't want to understand that, then to deal with a problem like this, that is a gender-related problem by nature, is going to be very difficult. The fact is, females are more commonly the perpetrators of domestic violence. The fact is, males are more commonly the worst perpetrators of domestic violence. If someone ends up losing their life, very likely it's the man at fault. Very likely. What do you do with that dilemma? And you can't pretend like it doesn't exist. You can't pretend like men and women are the same. You can't pretend like you could change women from being women to men. You can't pretend like you could change men from being men to women. That isn't something that is feasible here. There needs to be a solution that works along in line with the reality of what is in front of us. How do we solve that? I think that is the question. Keeping silent can be their main problem. We should have someone to talk about abuse in any form. I agree, but my thing is, I just don't think that it's about talking about it. I don't think that if men start just talking about it plenty, that will automatically be the solution to a lot of this. Because it's an attitude thing. It's an attitude that needs to change, and I'm not sure men talking only is the solution. Use your words, respect personal space. They love to act as though women and men are equal. We are not, and we would never be. Much more than talking. Agreed. But yeah, No, men, it's according to what you mean equal. It's according to what you mean equal. If you're talking about equal in terms of value as a human, then yeah, men and women are equal in terms of value as a human. But in terms of equal as in same, well, then no, they are not. Men and women are not the same. That's just a fact of life. There's nothing you could do to get away from that reality. Sociality now, if a man cries he's weak, he's not a real man. It have a lot of men hurting out here. A lot of Western movements are derailing the concept of gender roles and differences. It causes chaos. I agree. It's like I regularly make that comment. It seems like us humans, we struggle with getting balance. Very often the pendulum swings to one extreme or the other. So you found that women didn't have enough rights, and that you wanted to allow women to have the freedom to make choices that they wanted. Good, you made that happen. And then all of a sudden it went around to reach to the point where you're trying to pretend like women and men are actually the same. And the horrible thing about society is gender roles. While the human civilization would not have gotten out of the muck and mire if we didn't have gender rules. Gender rules was a key part of the advancement of human civilization. Thoughts on pronouns? I find the whole pronouns business, and that's not really a problem in Trinidad and Tobago, I think. But if you look at the arguments for it, it doesn't really make sense. And the nature of pronouns is how other people refer to you when you are not there, generally speaking. Pronouns is how other people refer to you when you are not there. Can you imagine the narcissism required for you to want to control how other people refer to you when you are not there? How other people refer to me when I am not there is actually not my business. Really and truly, it's not my business. That's why you're not supposed to be bothered when people bad talking you. That's not your business. They were not talking to you. That was one person talking to another person. That's their business. Feel free, you talk. And that, to me, that's the solution to a lot of this. A pronoun is not up to you. You could change your name if you want. That's your prerogative. You could name yourself whatever you want. That's what you can do. But pronouns, we decide how we use pronouns. And the thing is, the nature of what pronouns are for, they are for ease of classification in understanding things when we describe things. So if you are not able to use something that is commonly understandable, it makes communication hard and nonsensical. So yeah, that's my thoughts on pronouns. But I don't think that's not a problem in Trinidad. And to be very honest, when I look at the direction a lot of this is going, I think the fad that is what a lot of this is seems to be dying, because they're reaching the point of being ridiculous too quickly. They're going too far too fast, and a lot of people are jumping off the train. They're like, at some point in time, when you reach to the point of telling a 3-year-old that they know they're mixed gender, whatever, people start to say, okay, this is reaching a little too far. So I think that isn't going to be much of a problem eventually anyway. And it doesn't really have anything to do with freedom and liberality in a society. That's not what freedom is. Freedom is you doing what you want with yourself. Freedom isn't you dictating what other people do with themselves. You're free. You're free to be and do what you want. You're not free to decide what other people say and what other people do. That's not how freedom works. That's not how a liberal society works. No. Now, Dave Chappelle hit a really deep nerve in that community with his last Netflix special. Yeah, he did. And somebody tried to stab him on stage basically for it, apparently. But so is the way it goes. There's ideology behind some of this. There's ideology, there's fad. It's a whole mix of some weird stuff going on there. You can talk for hours about what is going on there. Are you conservative or liberal? I guess that is dependent on what you're talking about. There are some things I want to conserve, and I am both conservative and liberal in a sense. Liberal, by the way, according to what you mean by liberal, refers to you believe in the Western liberal democracies where you have liberalism, freedom, the liberty to do as you will, basically. And in that case, I am a liberal in that sense, yes. But there are many things I understand that it makes sense conserving. It doesn't make sense just burning through everything that you've had here that has worked for millennia and saying that, oh, we're just going to do this new thing and we're sure it's going to work. Nah, it doesn't work like that. Yes, I am from Trinidad, but I find that Trinidad's politics, it's due time that Trinidad's politics matures enough that it moves outside the realm of UNC or PNM only and reaches to the realm of understanding some political ideology. Are you more collectivist? Are you more individualist? Are you more authoritarian? Are you more libertarian? Are you more socialist? Are you more capitalist? Like actual political ideology. What do you see as your goal for this country instead of just PNM, UNC, URP, CPEP, Gary Walk? And at that level of politics, why are we surprised with the level they return to us? Yeah, why are we surprised about that? I was looking, as we were talking about politics, as we drifted over to politics, someone was talking about we started talking about the Minister of Energy and what he said over on CNN whenever that was, yesterday, whenever, and his stretching of the truth and garnishing the truth to sound as good as he'd like. And I was saying that I think a lot of that just has to do with them being cultivated in politics within their own little bubbles, within their echo chambers, and that doesn't help. You're real captivating, boy. You should run. You have my vote. Politics has the biggest impact on our social life. The politics in Trinidad created a dependent nation. I agree with that. Is Tobago ready for the independence 100%? That is obviously wrong. Even the people asking for independence in Tobago understand they are not ready for that. Tobago spends about $2 billion per year. Tobago makes about 400 million, somewhere there, lower couple of 100 million per year. They spend more than they make. They cannot sever their ties with Trinidad and survive, at least not how they are accustomed surviving. So no, they are not ready for that. But yes, let's see why some of the politics in Trinidad is created the way it is created. So I saw this video over on the reporter Keishan Haynes' Twitter profile, if you want to find where I found it from. And sorry, that's just some remnants from those kids they released on us after that first week. Oh geez. But yeah, our opposition leader in one of their forums that they have, she brought out a piece of paper showing, well, they have a concerted attack right now on Minister Foster Cummings, and I think I want to do a video on that at some point in time, because the attack doesn't actually line up fully logically. Like what they say the attack isn't in reality what it is. I think some people may misunderstand some of this, but we'll see if we'll get into that. Sorry. But the former prime minister, the opposition leader, raised this piece of paper saying that this is proof that they are going to be promoting some kind of land grabbing nonsense somewhere down the road. And she was wrong. But the fact that she was wrong isn't the main problem. It was how the wrong was dealt with at the end. If you're not over on YouTube, you won't see the video, but don't worry, you could go over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Spring on YouTube, and subscribe there and see the video anytime you want at some other later point. But you'd hear what she's saying here.
And how can you seriously put the name of whatever it is you're going to do next week? How to what? How to land grab and get away with it? Are you for real? Are you serious? How to land grab and get away with it? And you have a minister, comments, I think, and Minister Becker's going down there with his former PNM councillor in charge of the Heliconia to go and tell people how to land grab and get away with it. Shame! Disgraceful! These people have absolutely no care for anything.
By the way, it's a meme.
And then those two ministers have nothing to do with lands. If they come to tell us now, oh, we're going to see about land tenure for farmers and so on.
And to me, this shows the politicization in this. If I were her, from the moment I saw how to land grab and get away with it, I was going to think like, this doesn't seem like how a government is going to phrase some. Let me do a cursory search on this. Let me at least go and scroll through Facebook and see what Facebook says about this. But she didn't. And if you're looking at the video, right about this point, someone walks up and hands her a little piece of paper.
Land for farmers. Done with such a damaging report.
A little piece of paper right there.
Okay, somebody sent me a note. They said the Heliconia graphic was Photoshopped. It is not about land grabbing, but about land tenure. My point still...
Pause right there. So someone dropped a note for a former prime minister. Someone dropped a note. Do you think politicians are pleasant? But I find that not much young people are getting into politics. Do you think politicians are pleasant human beings? I think that the selection pressure on politicians leaves us with very often narcissists, or the people who actually want to do things right sometimes are just bogged down in the system. I won't answer whether they are pleasant beings or not. So yes, someone told her that she was wrong, she got it right, it was photoshopped, etc. Listen to her reaction without missing a beat. Listen to...
tenure. My points still hold. My points still hold. My points still hold. My points still hold.
How does your point still hold? That makes the point literally does not still hold. What you thought it was the opposite, and you are willing to jump out here and say my point still holds. How? Literally, by definition, your point does not still hold. But this, to me, listening to this video, the ending here was the part that sickened me. Listen to these grown adults. A big man, you could hear his voice, and hear the laugh being forced out to make sure, you boost up the leader's ego. We cannot allow the leader to feel anyway here. Listen.
What is Cummins going to tell you about land tenure? He can't even show documents what bush land he have or don't have. What is Ms. Becker's going to tell you about land tenure? Thank you for the heads up. But I'm still right in my comments to you.
What do you think about that? What is that? What is that? What is that? I found whoever that grown man was, and you could go and look back for the video if you ever want to find it. Whoever that grown man was in the background, like, like, sir, your man card needs to be revoked. Use the lady. No, don't use the ladies. You're embarrassing the ladies too. Use the other. You are embarrassing. And that right there, that, like, what Mrs. Prasad Bisesa does there is politics. As somebody say, that's politics. That's politics. They would watch black and tell you it's white, and if they can convince you, they're fine with that. That's what politicians do. But the despicable part is these big people, this big man somewhere in the background there, listening to this politician speak, watch her say the wrong thing, watch her be corrected, and then try to force the most hearty laugh you can to boost her up in her error. What manner of insanity is that? Who does something like that? And how do you expect someone who is doing something like this to work for the betterment of our country? You don't have the best interest of our country at heart. No, you don't. No, you really don't. But that's how our politics is, Unfortunately. Now, man, I feel he was laughing at her. I highly doubt it. It's pathetic. That's the word for that. Pathetic. And when you say pathetic, referring to someone behaving like that and all of that, you have to make sure you pronounce that TH. It's pathetic. Well, it's similar to the email gate behavior. Ha ha ha. Jungle Toad. I wouldn't mind you jumping up here to have a discussion about the email gate, because I will not be surprised if you may not even know necessarily the full facts surrounding the email gate. Now, here's the thing. There's a lot to criticize the PNM on if you don't like them. And if you listen to enough of my lives, you would get a lot of it. But Emailgate wasn't one of those. Emailgate fell through not because it was wrong, but because the emails on the server could no longer be accessed. It was never proven that the Emailgate scandal was wrong or that the now Prime Minister lied. In fact, the statements coming out from the email company when Trinidad and Tobago asked for those emails, the statements leaned towards the side of there being some truth to the fact that the emails did exist. But the problem was they no longer did, and they could not be found on the email server anymore. For those who know about it or have a kind of slight knowledge, that might make sense. For those who know nothing about anything to do with Emailgate, you might be wondering, what on earth is he talking about with emails? Some video we might go through that email bacchanal. Some video we might. Sorry. That was a I need my job laugh. Yes, exactly. That was somebody who is laughing for their job there. Politically correct. All Uncle Gary said there was not enough to go forward on that gate. There was not enough to go forward. You see that not enough to go forward? Politicians love that. They love playing in that game. They love playing that game. Where if you're guilty, there's always not enough to go forward in it, so you could always get away. And if someone is not guilty, then the opposing politicians could always blame them for something, but there's not enough forward. But there's not enough to go forward with that investigation anyway. That not enough is unacceptable. Yeah, but who is going to make it unacceptable? Jungle Toad? Next week, I will. Next week, we'll go through Emailgate and see if we could find some of those old stories. The problem is, a lot of Trinidad's old stories, they don't archive them properly. You have to really go hunting for some of these stories. This story barely 6 years old, and it's like, where is this story? While you could go and find newspaper articles in the US from 1962. Like, jeez, man. Anyway, that's all I have for now, folks. It was nice. But as usual, we aren't having the after discussion for this week, you know. That's like the Auditor General inconclusive. It's always inconclusive. That's a convenient answer. Thoughts on modern masculinity in modern society, and do you think chivalry is dead? I do not think chivalry is dead. I don't think chivalry will ever die. It may be reduced to some extent, or it may even be tweaked, but I don't think chivalry is dead. Thoughts on modern masculinity? What is modern masculinity? To me, a lot of what might be considered modern masculinity is moving away from masculinity. And something, the thing is, there seems to be some evidence, and some of this is not settled science, but there seems to be some evidence that the closer humans live together, men decrease in testosterone. There seems to be some evidence of that. And that might be understandable, because testosterone also increases aggression. If you're living on top of each other, you cannot be too aggressive. So what you generally find is men in more urban areas have lower levels of testosterone, and that has other ancillary effects going down the road too. What the bro and time work shift had a plan my skipper. I'm not sure yet, Jungle Toad. My apologies. My concern is the same person who was Minister of National Security was the top cop at the time of investigation. Ooh. That's a good point, Crash 7200. That's a very good point. Indeed, it was my first time. I'll definitely be here again. Blessed night to all. Keep good. All right. Seems like we're living too close to each other. All right, folks. It was nice. I will see you all again. Tonight is only Thursday, so I will see you all again tomorrow. Don't worry. We're here tomorrow, 9:30. Peace. Peace. It was nice. I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained. And I will see you again tomorrow for the next Mindful Live, which will be Mindful Live 75. Pew. Laters.